Welcome back to this special lecture series on EPFO, labor issues and industrial relations. We are talking about the Code on Social Security 2020. Like in the case of the previous video, even in this particular video, the emphasis will be MCQ based learning only. So we'll be focusing on specific objective of clearing this EPFO examination, expecting what sort of questions can be asked as MCQs. So the Code on Social Security 2020, what exactly is social security is what you have to understand. Previously, we have studied that this four social security codes have subsumed 29 different laws, and within that 29 laws, 9 of them were about the aspect of social security. Broadly, they are about provident fund, gratuity, and ESIC, which is about insurance. So, what do you mean by provident fund? The word provident means something that is talking about or something that is indicative about future. You are planning for your future. To elaborate, every person works till the age of 60 in most of the cases across the world. After that, he does not have any income. Then, how does he sustain himself? Keeping this reality in view, a small amount of money is actually deducted from his monthly income, and it is added to one account called the PF account. This PF means Provident Fund. Provident, as we have already discussed, is about future. Second thing is about gratuity. Even this is considered to be an aspect of social security. Like when we express our gratitude to a service, that can be quantified in the form of gratuity. For example, we go to a restaurant. If you like the service of a waiter, we tip him. That is nothing but gratuity. In India, that particular activity of tipping a person is not considered to be a gratuity because there is no legal definition. But there are certain countries which mandate certain X percentage of the bill to be paid as a gratuity to the waiter. That is called tip, which is made mandatory. Similarly, in the case of our employees, we give them gratuity for their loyalty towards a company. We'll be discussing those as well. The next thing is about employee state insurance corporation. We're talking about the aspect of insurance. We don't have to elaborate upon the need of insurance, especially in the times of COVID, where we have seen millions suffering because of lack of insurance and appropriate medical facilities. So we don't have to highlight the importance of insurance. The next aspect that social security covers is maternity benefit, as motherhood is considered to be an important phase of a family's life. We need both the parents to be involved in this particular activity, and at this point of time it is expected that even organizations are more compassionate about this very human need of having maternity benefit. Apart from this, traditional areas which these 9 acts deal with, two important topics: one of career centers, which are a revamped version of the erstwhile employment exchanges, and the next one is gig workers. For example, you can take Swiggy, Ola, Uber, all the employees associated with such platforms. They are called gig workers. We'll be discussing about them as well. And this is the first time that there is a legal provision for gig workers as well. So these 6 areas comprise the scope of our study on social security for EPFO examination. So let us begin. In the previous wage code, we have already discussed the definition of wage. If you haven't watched that video, I request you to go back and watch it. So is PF considered to be a part of the wage? You have to remember that across the 4 codes, all the definitions are uniform. So the wage code definition for wage is similar to the definition of wage even in this social security code. So PF cannot be a part of the wage because it is an exclusion. Like we have seen, wage is nothing but a sum of 3 components, namely basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance. DNS allowance is to take into account inflation, that is very normal in an economy, to adjust your wages in accordance with inflation, to ensure that your living conditions are very uh, favorable. This DNS allowance component is adjusted from time to time. Similarly, retaining allowance is something like, say a software company does not have a project. So something called bench strength, or even though employees are not having any projects during that particular point of time, they'll be paid just to ensure that just when a project comes, the company is not forced to search for employees. So that is retaining allowance. Even that is considered to be a part of the definition of wage. Everything else is not. So you don't have to worry about the exclusions part. You just remember that these three constitute wage. So a PF is considered to be a percentage of wage. So this is it. Now, what are the various features of the Social Security Code, or SSC, or CSS as it is called? Firstly, like we've already discussed, it is uniform for all the employees. However, there can be a threshold beyond which this Social Security Code will be applicable. uh, the government will be notifying it from time to time. Which government, center or state? It is actually the center. Always remember, norms and rules will initially be framed by the central government to ensure uniformity across the country. The second point, all companies should mandatorily register themselves. This is a bit to formalize the economy. The next point, obviously, we will be expecting our companies to come up with formidable records. That is, if you employ a person, you have to maintain a record of the number of hours he's working, the amount of wages you gave him, and overtime wages as well. Overtime wages, are they considered to be a part of the wage? No. Please remember this. And at the same time, this records should be used to ensure that the employee gets pay slips as well as electronic IT returns. In this code, we are recognizing 5 different category of workers: home-based, self-employed, wage workers, gig workers, and platform workers. Platform workers, who are these workers? So there is slightly a interlink between gig workers and platform workers, but platform workers are those who exclusively depend on a certain platform for their survival. Like, say for example, you have a app called Urban Clap, or Urban Company as it is called now. The plumbers, etc., they depend on this platform's notification, or they depend on this platform for getting a client. So such kind of workers are called platform workers. So these are the 5 categories of workers. Now one might wonder, these labor reforms are intended to bring ease of doing business, but aren't these provisions actually increasing the burden on the companies? It might seem like we are trying to increase the expenditure compared to the previous times, because previously what companies used to do was, say if the wage, uh, this is the component on which PF was supposed to be given. So for this wage, they used to decrease the amount, and exclusions part, they used to increase that. Say for example, if 1 lakh is the salary, there were scenarios even then where 20K is given as wage and 80K is shown as allowance, so that they reduce their contribution towards PF and other deductions, which is mandatory from government side. In the wage code, we have already discussed how we have ensured that our salary, for example, in this case 1 lakh, only 50,000 or 50% can be considered to be an exclusion part. Over and above this 50%, everything else will again be added back to the definition of wage. So in this way, we are increasing the liability of the company towards the contributions towards social security components. We already discussed that PF is considered to be a percentage of wage. Within the wage, we are actually calculating PF as a percentage of basic pay. When this basic pay itself is less, then obviously PF contribution will be low, and the commitment towards employees will also be very low. Now, we have mandated by this simple design clause of ensuring 50% over and above 50% as a component of wage that companies pay more amount towards PF. The next aspect is this provisions of the employer's provident fund. We have to keep in mind that ease of doing business is there, but at the same time there is some social security for workers. So the mandate is all the companies which have more than 20 employees, only for those companies this uh, pre-F provisions are applicable. Please remember this numbers. These numbers can be important, or these are the basis for MCQ questions in this EPFO examination. How much? So employer will be contributing 10% of the wages maximum, and employee 10% is the minimum. If he thinks he would have to secure more, he can increase that amount because it's his money. He can do whatever he wants to do with. You cannot force an employer to pay more, but employee can decide how much to save from his salary towards his future. And this percentage of 10, they can increase it to 12 as well. Who can increase? The central government. How about the self-employed workers? For them, center can make a scheme and ask them to contribute. So this is the overall provisions related to provident fund. Provident fund can be a very long term objective, but insurance is something that cannot wait in cases of emergency, and especially in the times of COVID we have seen how insurance is a priority. So employee state insurance corporation under the labor ministry, which is an attached office to the labor ministry, this takes care about the insurance needs of various employees. So applicability, certain definitions in the uh, code with respect to this particular ESIC component, we have to discuss those, and these are important from MCQ perspective. So to which organizations is this applicable? Every organization which has more than 10 employees. And you have to mind that this number 10 is not applicable for seasonal factories. What are seasonal factories? Say, for example, you can imagine standard fireworks. Only during the Diwali season they find employment. You will not find employment in off season. So such kind of um, factories are called seasonal factories. It's not applicable for them. Also remember, PF, for PF it is more than or equal to 20 employees, but for insurance it is just 10 employees. This shows that you cannot be lenient when it comes to insurance. So even if you have 10 employees, it is a liability for the organization. Now in the case of hazardous factory, in such a scenario it becomes even more important. So if there is at least only one employee also, it is applicable. Similarly, in plantation worker, if the plantation worker wants to avail that facility, he can voluntarily do it, but you cannot enforce this rule on any employer. So there is something called employee state insurance fund. So what happens here is there will be contributions for this fund both from center as well as state. And here is an interesting component. In Companies Act 2013, you have something called corporate social responsibility. So in this corporate social responsibility, in the past 3 years, whatever is the net profits, 2% of that profits should be contributed towards some social activity as CSR. So these funds can be added to this employee state insurance fund also to ensure that employees are feeling a bit safe. So in the case of gig workers like Swiggy, what happens? Even in the case of contract workers, what happens? First of all, their pay itself is so low, and if you make deductions, how can they survive? So in this situation, both employer and employee's contribution, whatever is there, that cannot be deducted from the wages, and the company itself should pay towards ESIC. Note, Is PF given to gig workers? Not yet, but center can notify in the future. So obviously the purpose of this fund we already know, medical insurance. And note, the salary of the employees of this organization ESIC, that is the Employee State Insurance Corporation, is also from this Employee State Insurance Fund. Now the insurance for all the employees working in this organization is also given from this fund. How much? Central government will notify that from time to time. As of now, it is believed that the notification would come in the month of October or November. It was originally supposed to come out on April 1st of 2021, and enforcement was supposed to begin on April 1st, 2021, but because of the second wave of COVID, it did not happen. Now it is expected somewhere around October or November. It is not notified yet. Now, what if the employer does not pay for that insurance component, or whatever small premium that is there, or if the employer didn't pay, but there is an emergency for that employee? In that case, ESIC will pay first and then recover that amount later from the employer. Moving on, we'll come to the next aspect of gratuity. So, whatever is being discussed here is a potential MCQ question. Right. So we have discussed that gratuity is nothing but an expression of gratitude by paying a lump sum after certain amount of time as decided by the government. Now, again, to which companies or which organizations is this applicable? Again, all types of establishments are a part of this, including any shop that has more than 10 employees. So, look at this number, 10 employees. On which date? On any day in the past 12 months, if the shop has employed 10 people or more, then that establishment must pay gratuity. So what is the eligibility? If you work in an organization continuously for 5 years, for every year, that is, say you're working in that organization, let's take this example. If you're working in that organization for 5 years and 7 months, you round it off because it is more than 6 months, you worked in that organization for 6 years. So for every year, you will be getting 15 days worth salary as your gratuity amount. So let us consider your wages are 25,000. So excluding the Sundays, you have 26 working days in that month. So what is per day salary? 25,000 by 26. Like that, you will be getting for 15 days in a year. And how many years have you worked there? 6 years. So what is the total amount? 86,538 rupees will be your gratuity if you continuously work for 5 years. Similarly, in case of journalist, that is possible if you work continuously with an organization for 3 years. And in case of seasonal employment, you will get 7 days worth of salary instead of 15 days after the end of season. However, there are certain exceptions. If a person dies or is disabled, or fixed term employment, another name for contract employment, uh, or any other format of employment or exception as notified by the center from time to time. Please remember this, center notifies it from time to time. This provision you will find in almost every clause, because ultimately there should be some flexibility for the center to notify things from time to time. You cannot expect uh, parliament to come down and make a law every single time you need a change. So this provision will be there in almost every single line of the code. Now, what do you mean by this fixed term employment? Say you need to get a job done, and for that you will need certain amount of time. For a contract period, you will employ a person. After that contract ends, if the contract is for minimum of 6 months, over and above 1 year, or over and above 6 months, how much ever might be the time, 15 days worth of salary will be given on a pro rata basis, or in proportion to whatever is the contract period. Remember, this is applicable only for gratuity, not PF. PF is something that is a very long term thing. You cannot expect long term things from contract employees. Okay, what if the employer denies to pay this? There is a jail of 1 year or a fine of 50,000 or both. So that is all you have to know with respect to gratuity. And the next one is maternity benefit. That is, after childbirth, mother is expected to take care of the kids. So who gets this? Every woman, only for the first two kids. From the third kid, it is for 12 weeks. For the first two kids, it is for 26 weeks. And for the fourth kid, it is basically 6 weeks. It is designed so that population increase is discouraged, and at the same time it is not so viable for the organization if more and more number of leaves are given. So when did this start, or what is the applicability of this maternity benefit? All formal organizations, obviously there should be more than 10 employees at any given point of time in the past 12 months. When will this start? From the very next day of delivery or miscarriage or medical termination of pregnancy. Please remember, three conditions are there, not just delivery, miscarriage, medical termination of pregnancy. How much time period? It is 26 weeks. So throughout this 26 weeks, there will be payment for the employee, full salary. There is no deduction. So consider this to be the delivery date. Now, one cannot take 6 weeks prior to this delivery date, the maternity leave, and 4 months or 20 weeks after the delivery date maximum. So, within this period, you are entitled to get this maternity benefits, not before that, not after that. So, you can take a leave, but it will not be a paid leave. So, you can take unpaid leave after this period of 26 weeks. During this time, if the prenatal care is not given in the organization, then such organization should pay 3,500 rupees medical bonus. This is another MCQ which is possible, and this is of course valid only if the woman is working for a minimum of 80 days in an organization prior to a delivery date. Within this bill, after the company allows the woman to rejoin the company, she still needs to take care of the child. So she must get two breaks within a day till the baby is of 15 months. And if there are more than 50 women employees in that particular organization, then a creche facility should also be given. Creche is a center where kids are taken care of. Also remember that, what about the cases of adoption and surrogacy? So even in this cases, 12 weeks of maternity benefit is given. Again, what if this is not complied with? You will get a fine of 50,000 or a jail of 6 months or both. Previously, there was a separate law for building and construction workers which has been subsumed under this present Social Security Code. So, in the provisions laid down for the safeguard of this building and construction workers, the code mandates SS, which is a minimum of 1% and a maximum of 2% of what? Cost of construction. This will be used towards the social welfare of the construction workers. So if you default, you will have to pay interest. That is, the construction company should pay along with an interest. What is the time period? Say the project work is finished on a day X. Now X plus 60 is the last date for depositing this amount in the uh, particular fund. So the central government can exempt certain classes of construction companies, and this can be notified from time to time. We have already discussed this. The next thing is unorganized gig workers and platform workers. So social security is most necessary for these set of workers because of the unpredictable nature of their work. So as far as the schemes are considered with respect to social security for these workers, both center and states can bring about that, and the fund can be corporate social responsibility fund as per Companies Act of 2013. Note, what is the age here for the employee? 16 years. If you can get a license at the age of 16, driving license, then automatically you can also work in, uh, say, as a Swiggy delivery boy, Swiggy or Zomato delivery boy. So in order to get the benefits, the employee or any person who wants to participate in this gig activity, who is more than 16 years or old, he should submit a self declaration that he is indeed a gig employee and he wants to avail certain schemes. Both center and state will contribute to this apart from the CSR fund. We've already discussed this. So the last two concepts, one is the career center. Previously we have had something called employment exchanges. So what graduates or any sort of skilled worker used to do was go to these employment exchanges previously and register their names, just to ensure that data is available with the employment exchange, and using this data people used to get recruited. But right now this career center is not just a data collection center, it will go beyond that and upskill people and provide career services. So skilling is one such important component uh, to meet the industry standards, and career centers will take care of even that aspect as well. So as a part of the social security code, it is mandatory to inform the career center about the person. However, it is not needed to recruit from the given list of career centers. I mean, the career center cannot say you have to go and recruit such kind of persons only. All it can ensure is make it mandatory for the companies to dole out data for better policy making. Obviously, in order to ensure ease of doing business, you cannot say that you have to employ certain kind of an employee, because companies might be looking for some aspects which suit their economic activity. So we are giving that flexibility of ease of doing business, but at the same time we're also maintaining a database of workers for better policy making. So this is the social security code, and we have discussed all the important trivial information which is required for EPFO examination. Unlike UPSC CSC exam, EPFO can be very factual. So that is the reason why we have discussed all the numbers and um, all the provisions in detail for this code, especially given the fact that a lot of laws have been repealed. So if you want the PDF of this particular explainer series, or if you want the notes for this, you can find that on this Telegram channel t.me/Hindu highlights. You will find that the name of the channel is UPSC highlights, but the address is Hindu highlights. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.